Well, Energy Media readers, we've got a bit of a treat for you today because this is one of your own. We're interviewing Dr. Joe Vipond or Vipond?
Vipond.
Vipond. And who's an emergency room doc over at Foothills, I believe, and also the co-chair of Climate Hub in Calgary. And so, Joe, you're an ardent climate activist, and you've been busy with Greta Thunberg coming to town and so on. So I know this election was really important to you. What's your take so far on what you're seeing for the results that are beginning to come in?
I think this is the best of all possible worlds. I think the Liberals didn't really deserve to have a majority, and so we're seeing now that it's going to be a Liberal minority, which would be very interesting for this province. I think a lot of people are going to set their hair on fire, and the talk of separation is going to go from like tenfold to 1,000-fold. But overall, I think because the climate crisis is such an urgent and time-dependent phenomenon, to have balance of power held by one of the two climate loving parties will be very good. I mean, both the Bloc Québécois and the NDP understand that this is a big issue, and they will not let the Liberals get away with going half measures.
So you're in the Global Shapers Party, which is a group of Alberta or
Shapers
Calgary.
with a P.
Gotcha.
P is in potato.
So these are folks who are progressives and they're very concerned about climate. What's the mood in the party where you're at tonight?
I think people are, they also kind of felt that this was what was necessary. There's very few people in Alberta that were pining, even amongst the progressives, that were pining for the Liberal majority. So this is kind of hitting the sweet spot for a lot of people.
And I've asked this of a couple of my experts, so I'll ask it of you. Once the election's over and we have a new government, so let's assume for a moment that it's a Liberal minority government supported by the NDP, the Bloc, or whoever, the parties. And what does that mean now? What do we do in the post-election around the national conversation about energy and climate, especially in Alberta? What do we do about Alberta?
Yeah, I think, I'm not partisan, I'll just say that right off the bat, but I really like the idea that Elizabeth May had, that we need to have a multi-party kind of war cabinet to look at what the next steps are. The Conservatives should be there, the Liberals should be there, all the opposition parties should be there. Well, except maybe the PPC. They can stay at home, but maybe they'll be forced to stay at home because they're not elected. And then we can have a mature conversation about how we're going to deal with this and how the science is going to dictate where we're going.
Okay, I see the optimism around a war cabinet, and that certainly sends a message to a lot of Canadians. But I don't necessarily think that sends the message that a lot of Albertans want to hear. But more importantly, Joe, because I don't want to make it sound like, all Albertans or a majority of Albertans are anti-climate change or climate deniers. It's the leadership in Alberta. That's the part of it. They've kind of, in the election in April, I think on the climate front, it's fair to say that the province took a step backwards. So what do we do now? And it's not just the politicians, it's also industry and business leaders who are sort of moving in lockstep backwards. How do we change the conversation in Alberta to get Alberta in sync with the rest of the country and moving in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is not just the rest of the country, it's the rest of the world. You probably saw that another insurer on, I believe, Thursday said that they weren't going to insure any oil sands developments, and we're losing investment in our industry in a time where being carbon limiting our carbon emissions has become a priority for a lot of people, including investors, including insurers. We need to be seen as the best of the best when it comes to low carbon emissions. And so I think what has been really scary for people like me who live in Alberta, who love Alberta, who want Alberta to prosper, is this idea that we can have a vibrant industry while at the same time living in our carbon policy. I feel, and I know you kind of feel the same way too, is the only way to really make this transition successful is to accept that the wave is coming and try and ride it, which means strong carbon policy, which means accepting that the boom towns at times are coming back and planning for that. And planning for that means supporting the workers and the communities are going to be affected by this transition.
Do you think that assuming again that the Liberals form a minority government, do you think that that then sets the stage to have this really tough conversation but one that's absolutely necessary? Like, how do we have that conversation? Is it you and me in a coffee shop? Do we have conferences? Do we picket the legislature? What do we do?
That's a very good question. If I had the answer, I'd be doing it right now. I mean, I guess part of my perspective is that the people who are driving the change in Alberta right now are still a minority. I mean, there was definitely a majority that voted for the UCP, don't get me wrong, but the actual people that are driving the policy are the minority. There's still a large number of progressive voters. Even if 55% voted for the UCP, that still means 45% didn't, which is 2 million people. That's a lot of voices. And then of the people that remain that voted for the UCP, some of those are people that voted, they're not hardcore UCPs. And so one of the things that the Hub is trying to do, what I'm trying to do personally through some of the work that I'm doing, is try and educate people and inspire people to be better climate protectors. And so to my mind, the idea is we need to have more information out there. We need to have better information out there. And we need to inspire people to start to take action.
Well, Joe, you've been an inspiration for me. I have to say that. We met 3 years ago, and we've had a number of these kinds of conversations. And I look forward to having more of them in the post-election period. Thank you very much for doing this tonight.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
You too.
Thanks, Joe.